IVM.
Hi, I'm Rohan Joshi, and on my podcast, the show about crypto, I've been having some pretty cool conversations with industry experts about what exactly cryptocurrency is and what makes it so exciting. If you haven't already, please check it out on the IVM Podcasts Network. Now, a quick shout out to my fellow crypto heads. We've got a listener survey going on, which will take not more than 10 minutes of your time to fill out. So please check the link in the description and help me out by filling it up. Don't forget to tune into a show about crypto on the IVM app and wherever you get your podcasts from.
Schools have always functioned a certain way. How we visualize schools look, how things are taught, how even the curriculum has been built has not really changed in, I would say, a long time. But especially over the last couple of years, schools have had to adopt technology more than they have in decades. And in many ways, it's accelerated one aspect of what we call EdTech, which we don't talk about enough, which is in-school EdTech. How can technology enable teaching in schools to be more in tune with the times, more in tune with today's students, and to also truly enable all students to learn the way, rather, to make sure there's almost a level playing ground between anybody who's in a tier 2 or a tier 3 town to someone who's in a city. They all learn in many ways in a similar platform, in similar ways, and in some ways democratize the whole space. One such company that's doing this is Lead, where they're, unlike a lot of other edtech firms, not going around the schools, they're actually going through them or rather working with them. And they're also recently scaled to a unicorn. And today I have their CMO, Anupam Gurani, on Advertising is Dead to talk about all these changes, to understand the role technology is really playing, how these multiple consumers in this side of edtech are evolving, and most importantly, to understand where this is leading, both for education, but also for careers, for people who want to work in the edtech part of schools. More on this in this week's episode of Advertising is Dead. I'm Varun Duggirala. We're right back with Anupam Gurani.
Going for parties is just so frustrating these days. I mean, your mom will make it a point to come and tell you how her friend's son has secured a house for her, and your wife will also find out that her sister's husband is taking her on a foreign holiday, while you're wondering why you're the only one who doesn't have a plan for the damn future. That's why I never sleep well during the festive time. Unless... www.hdfclife.com. Select. Done. You know what? I think I'll sleep rather well after all. Live calm. With HDFC Life, click to protect life. The Income Plus option offers life cover and steady income stream, so you're always ready for any expenses that life throws at you. Basically, this plan lets you plan your expenses like you plan your vacations. It's that simple. Visit hdfclife.com to know more and for terms and conditions.
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're talking to Anupam. Hi, Anupam. Welcome to the show. I must tell you, and I said this before we hit record, I have a vested interest in doing this episode as a parent of a 4.5-year-old. I have a lot of points of view on this space now, officially. And I'm sure that you have a lot more perspective on the space, but welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Varun. As I mentioned, just like you, I'm also a parent of 2 kids who've been at home for the last 2 years and who are super excited to have the schools back open. And this is something that as an organization, as a parent, I've been wanting. As an organization, of course, we've been wanting our schools to get back to feet. Yeah. So thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
So I thought it'd be good to kind of start off by talking about the entire landscape. If you look at the because whenever we talk about EdTech, I feel oftentimes it's either you're talking about universities and degrees or you're talking about stuff which students would do outside school. But in any ways, what you guys are kind of have built out rather, is almost like something which schools actually use in their functioning. So just from a broad landscape perspective, how do you see the EdTech side of schools right now in terms of how it was maybe even pre-pandemic and how it is right now?
Sure. That's a great question to start. The way we look at this industry, right, and obviously my views also have gotten changed over the last 2 years of having joined Lead. Uh, the schools ecosystem in India is extremely large, right? So there are some 25 crore children who go to schools today in India. Half of them go to government schools, and there are close to 15 lakh schools in India which cater to this population of 25 crore children. Half of that is being catered to by government schools. The balance half is being catered to by private schools, and give or take a few percentage points here and there. Now, within this set of private schools, there is something called affordable private school segment, which is where most of India studies. Right, if you leave aside the top tier of schools, which schools which are in metro cities, which are able to command a high fees, maybe fees upwards of 1 lakh rupees. They're able to afford all the latest facilities, good teachers, have great exposure for the children. We are not talking about this school. We are talking about we are trying to solve a very fundamental problem that in tier 2, 3, 4 towns, even today, the schooling has not evolved while the world has evolved to a great degree. Right, they are largely facing three large challenges. Number one is the challenge of the kind of teaching talent that is available in those markets. That's one. Most of the teachers there are paid, they are paid in the range of 5,000-6,000 rupees a month. So the kind of quality of teachers that they're able to afford and the talent pool that is available is poor, right? So that's one big problem. Two is the adoption of technology in these schools, or the kind of solutions that they have adopted historically were all piecemeal. So somebody would go and sell a smart class, another person will go and sell a CRM to a school, right? But all the solutions were disaggregated. None of them were oriented towards making school learning outcomes better for the child. Right, that is the second largest problem that these schools have faced. And lastly, the awareness overall of school owners, right, has been relatively low, and likewise for the parent. Now, all of them know that maybe this education is not enough, and there are challenges with it, and therefore, and even on the parent side, when parents go and choose a school, there is no way for us to benchmark schools today that this school is better. So therefore, parents tend to judge schools basis maybe a little more flimsy things, which are more related around marketing of school, or which are more visible to the eye. For example, someone will say, "Hey, is there a security camera in this school? Or is there a swimming pool in this school? Or is there a playground in this school?" Right, and they will use those as surrogates to say this school is good or this school is bad, but not really talk about the core learning aspect of it. And availability of those solutions in these markets has been relatively low. So if you combine these three things, you have a very large industry catering to maybe more than 10 crore children, which is the primary form of education for them. However, the learning outcomes, etc., that are the most core for students there, they have always been underdelivered. So the way we measure learning outcomes is we say that a child in a certain grade should be able to let's say do multiplication of 2-digit numbers, right? By a certain grade, he or she should be able to add, subtract, do problems of solve problem statements. So or let's say if you're talking about English language, you'd say that, hey, a child in grade X, he or she should be able to read well. He should be able to read or write words of which are 3 or 4 alphabets. He can spell those things out, etc. And that's how you measure the learning indicators for a child at every grade. So those become extremely important for one to measure. However, none of these solutions have really been oriented or built around delivering learning outcomes for children. So eventually, what you see is that children, they're going to school, but there is a huge learning gap in where they should be in terms of their ability to learn, but where they are. So that's the core problem that we are trying to solve through our solution. Coming back to the EdTech part of it, I think in the last few years, there's been a lot of talk about B2C EdTech, right? Which is, and credit to all of these players, no offense to them, they are the ones who've created, Byju's, for example, has created the largest EdTech in the world, and it's a matter of great pride for us as a country that the largest EdTech comes from our nation. But what they are still solving is, it's a supplement to the primary education. Schooling is still primary. What Byju's gives as an offering to student is still supplementary.
Yeah.
We are trying to solve for the core education which is being done in the school, and for a lot of parents they can't afford some as a supplementary solution, right? So that's been our approach. So it's a large pie, and currently not being addressed.
Yeah.
And while there are a lot of players in the supplementary industry, but in the primary industry, which there is a lot of scope, but it is a little harder, as you said, because you are trying to cater to multiple. Your solution needs to cater to multiple stakeholders, which is a school owner, teacher, student, parent, all of them. So it's not the easiest to sort of build, and therefore you don't see too many players in the industry.
Yeah. I must ask you this because you've worked across industries, right? And I'm sure you would have some sort of preconceived notions of what this industry would have, and now that you've been in the organization for 2+ years, what have you really seen that you were like, okay, I didn't think this is how the consumer was, or this how this market was? What have you kind of learned about this space, and just generally about, I think at the base of it, the core consumer also becomes the student and what they really need. But what have you kind of understood about the kinds of consumers that you cater to over the last 2 years primarily? Because obviously you have, I think, across categories, there are multiple areas of experience that you have. But did you come in saying, oh, this is how it's going to be? And then suddenly you say, okay, 1 second, this is not how I thought it would be.
Yeah, again, great question, Varun. I think, I was myself brought up in a small town, and when I say small town, actually I was brought up in Gurgaon, but when I was growing up, it was a small town. I moved to Gurgaon in '83, right? Yeah. When Gurgaon was not Gurgaon, the only thing people knew about Gurgaon was Maruti Udyog Limited, right? And that's where my father used to work. And my mother, she's taught in a school, affordable private school, where the fees used to be in the range of 1,000 rupees per student. Now, from that point to now, right, and that was my last exposure to school as a student. And as I grew up and moved across cities, across different parts of the world, and then now my children, they've been going to different schools in different countries and different cities. I've seen that education, whatever I had received, the education that my children have received, there's a remarkable difference in that, right? It is probably more in tune with what kids need now. However, I think what was surprising for me after having joined LEAD is to really learn that in deeper towns now, tier 2, 3, 4 towns, that evolution of education has not happened, right? Now, so that was one big revelation for me. Number 2 was, I think, the realization that a better form of education is available out there. Parents have that. They know that, my child, he or she needs to move to a bigger city to get better education. And that's why, a lot of my cousins, younger cousins from, my native town. So I come from Almora, and almost everyone that I know there, all my cousins, their kids now, they have moved out for better education to larger, bigger towns, right? So that the reason why they do it is because they are aware that you need something better. What is happening here is probably not catering to the requirements of my child and will not ensure or give them a guarantee of success. And B, so therefore they are making that effort, right? So what we are trying to do is say that, hey, let's solve for it in your town, because not everyone is going to be able to move out.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not a palatable situation. Otherwise, you'll think that pura ka pura shehar bahar aa jayega. That's not
exactly.
Yeah. Right. So someone has to try and solve for that problem. That's the more difficult thing to do. I think these two pieces of realization were new. That education has not evolved in tier 2, 3, 4 towns as much as it has evolved in the metros. And B, I think the awareness is fairly heightened amongst parents that they are dissatisfied with what they have. Some of them are able to do something about it. Majority of them have to just live with it.
So, looking at it from that perspective, and I've, as I run through the product, a lot of it just makes sense that it will almost be a benchmark. So, okay, it's powered by this platform, which means that you're going to get a set of things. So parents also kind of can make choices in a better way. And a lot of the even the content packs, if I can call them that, I don't know what term you would specifically use. What I found interesting was that you're almost saying this is now a consumer. If the student is a consumer who is used to consuming digital content, in many ways, how do we kind of bring that into the classroom rather than still sticking to the blackboard and I guess all the stuff that we would have consumed as kids in school, which in many ways still exists. So in that sense, I first want to talk about the schools and saying that how have the schools kind of reacted to this in terms of saying, okay, when this is what we'll have to add into the mix, this will have to kind of upskill our teachers. How much of that process really comes into what you guys do? Because I feel what important is you can hand someone something, but to actually teach them how to use it well and optimally must be a large part of what the business entails, and also to kind of market it to them. This is how it can make how you function as a school, as a teacher better. So how do you kind of tackle those aspects?
So I'll also maybe take the opportunity to describe what exactly is it that we provide to a school, right?
Yeah.
And you summed it up very well at the beginning, that LEAD is more like a school system. Right. So say all schools, they have a way of running their operations, right? Now there are three critical parts of it. If you think of a school, the core job of a school is to deliver learning to the student, right? Now, there are three elements for it. One is, what do they teach, right? Which is the core curriculum. How do they teach it, which we call as pedagogy, right? Ways of teaching. And three is, who's really teaching it? Essentially the teacher, right? And then there are different aids that people use in the school through hardware, software, etc., to deliver that learning to the child. Now, these are the core three things of a school, besides the infrastructure and the building and the principal and the admin staff. These are the core elements that we influence, right? So when we go to any school, we say that what is being taught. If let's say a school is a CBSE school, and they will follow certain books, we go to them with our content, which is aligned with CBSE. We say that, hey, the same chapter, the same curriculum is now going to be taught in a slightly different way, right? So it is a more audio, visual, and book led content, and not just a static book led content. So it becomes a little more interactive for the children. All our classrooms are enabled with smart TV. So that the children can actually visualize and see. When you are talking to them about digestive system, you really show the digestive system to them in motion, right? So that's part one. Part two is, how do we teach it? Essentially, that's around pedagogy, and that's where we work extremely closely with the teachers, and it's slightly linked to the who teaches it part as well, because we train the teachers on our curriculum and train them on the latest ways of teaching. Our curriculum is benchmarked with some of the best countries in the world, which are leading on these educational parameters. So, for example, Singapore. So one of our most popular offerings is English language. We treat English not as a language; we treat it as a skill. What do we mean by that? Essentially, English. In any English medium school, the language for teaching for all subjects is English. So if you're poor in English, you don't understand, you can't comprehend, it will have a ripple effect for the child across different subjects, right? So we focus a lot on English, and that improvement in English leads to improvement across subjects, right? So one of the very differentiated thing that we do versus everyone else is, when we go to a school, we assess all students on their current level of different subjects and specifically of English. Then we put all children who are at a specific level of English language, we club them together. It doesn't matter if you're in grade 5, but you are at level 3, you will sit with another student at level 3. And that student could be in grade 3, right? And we continue this operation till the time the child comes to his grade appropriate level. Now, it is a little painful. It is a little operational. A lot of times parents get offended that why are you putting my child from grade 5 into grade 3? But in 3 months' time, in 6 months' time, they see that change in their child, right? So we are able to bridge gaps, and we have data to prove it, that in 1 year, we can bridge learning gaps of almost 1.7 years as far as English language is concerned. So if someone is two levels behind, or a grade 5 level student is at a grade 3 level, then in 2 years' time, he'll be at his appropriate grade, right? So when we've done this and proven, and parents have noticed, and English is something, ELGA is something that our parents swear by, people who've been with us, students who've been studying on our platform. So the point that you made, that how do you convince teachers, really is, and in this process, sometimes the teachers are also learning, because a lot of teachers that we go and speak to, they are also not able to converse in
and
English
a lot
language.
of teachers don't necessarily want to learn. Is the problem with
No, I think what
it's a mixture. This is more a joke on my part. A lot of teachers want to learn as well, so I don't really take offense.
So see, there are two issues that we have identified for teachers. One is a skill, and another is a will, right? I think what we have found is that more often than not, the willingness to learn is there in the kind of segment of schools that we go to. I think it's the skill that is a challenge, and that skill part we are able to solve by our deep engagement with teachers and training them through the year. So we have a dedicated team which is called excellence team. Their core job is to work with teachers and help to train them and upskill them. And the last point that you mentioned was, how do we talk to parents? I think so far we have restricted our communication approach, etc. Largely to our existing customers. So we would talk to them often. However, now we've reached a point in our journey where we want to take, where we are now present across 3,000 plus schools. So therefore, we are going to parents across the country and talking to them about a lead powered school, how it is different, and why they should put their child in a lead powered school. So that approach from a mass media perspective is something that we've just taken.
What I also find super interesting is that I think you're one of the only platforms who actually talks through schools and not around them. I feel they often think is that, I think anything which is technology and education seems to be like, let's bypass the school, let's bypass the college, let's go straight to the consumer. What I find interesting here is that I think the last 2 years has actually taught a lot of us that physically being present in a space is something you can't take out of education to get true value. Like the whole community aspect, especially I think early years or school aspect, you can't take that out of the mix and just have it online. So while you're kind of doing this, are you also seeing kind of schools come back and say, okay, this is something we should really like you to add in, or, this is something. So almost in a way that it's no longer just you facilitating what you're doing, but them really coming back saying, this is something which I think our students it'll help us do what we're doing better. And what have those kind of things been, you've been able to kind of add into mix?
Sure. I think, we are, while we have been as an organization, we've been there for the last 6 to 7 years, and we've reached a certain scale in terms of presence only in the last 2 years. I think schools have been there for years, right? So some of the schools that we partner with have been in existence for more than 20-25 years, right? So there is a lot of knowledge residing with those schools. And if anything, what the pandemic has taught us is that schools are indispensable. They need to evolve, right? But they will continue to exist and thrive, and because it's a melting pot for students, for children, you can't keep them confined to closed doors and say that, hey, you will receive all your education here via a computer terminal or via a mobile phone. So that's point one. Point two is, I think because they have so much wealth of knowledge, a lot of our new latest features or new offerings that we bring to the market are actually coming as a result of schools pushing us for it. So, for example, we launched last year a program on coding. Right now, if you compare that program with, let's say, any B2C coding program, the price of it is, B2C coding program will cost you 30,000 rupees for a year. What we charge for a coding program to a student annually is 300 rupees. Right? So we are able to offer it at that price because of economies of scale. We are able to develop something and then deploy it across all our partner schools. And this is something that came in as a idea from one of our schools in a forum. They said that, hey, there is this skill which is required for children to be successful in the 21st century. And we currently lag because the way we are teaching computers, we teach computer science, we don't teach coding. We need to shift to coding. And therefore, how do we do it? Because we don't have the resources of building a program like that. So we build that out. So some of these initiatives really sometimes come in from schools themselves. Another thing that we rolled out recently was trying to help schools with admissions and marketing. It's core for their business, and while it is a little non-academic in nature from an offering perspective, but it is core for schools to be successful. They need admissions every year, and they don't have an organized way of doing it. Right? So we are trying to add a lot of value to them on their processes, on helping parents discover their schools. Some of the schools don't have a online presence at all. All of a sudden, online presence has started to become very important, right? Because it's a great way for parents to search and discover and figure out how many schools are there near me, which school is offering me, let's say CBSE board or state board, what are the reviews from parents, etc. So we are trying to build a large school directory for all of our school partners. So think of it as a equivalent of a Make My Trip.
Yeah.
Right. Make My Trip will have a listing directory for hotels. We'll have a listing directory for all schools. Okay. So we just launched it. It's a work in progress. It'll evolve over a period of time. But it was again something which came as a result of our interaction with schools.
And I think that makes total sense. Oftentimes when you're trying to find a school for your kid, it's more about asking people and say who went there. And I remember that's what we did when we were trying to figure out which school to send our daughter to. And I realized this is a pain point. I'm guessing most parents have, and I often find it surprising that some of these have not been solved for yet, even though it seems to be a problem that has existed forever. And what I feel is also interesting about this whole aspect is kind of builds a community as well, right? And as you see this community kind of evolving, are you also seeing that some things are kind of coming out from, let's say, the students themselves in terms of just how they're learning, which also builds into it. We spoke about what the schools are kind of asked for, but are there things which you're kind of seeing that for a student today versus even like 5 years ago, what are almost like must-haves for learning to happen in the right way, for education to happen in the right way? You kind of have to look at that lens, which maybe wasn't necessarily the case before. What would those be?
I think the way we are looking at all our students is, see, we have an ideal model of a graduate student profile. Yeah. So it's something that we have defined, and we eventually want to take the students in that direction. So it's like saying, what is your model student as and when he or she passes out, right?
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we promote internally, and it's very sacred to us, is that we want to stay away from driving competition, between two students. That's never a language that we want to use, that you are better than him, or she is better than you. What we try and do is, so therefore what we try and do is our job is to get a student to be a better version of himself or herself. Right. So how are you progressing? You were here, and have you moved from point A to point B? That's one core thing that we try and do. So one of the challenges that we've identified, for example, just beyond academics, is that students in small town do not get a platform to where they can get exposure, right? So when you move from a small town for your college to a large town, and I had that journey personally.
Same here.
You all of a sudden are overwhelmed with the kids in a metro city, because the way they would speak, the way they would articulate, they are super confident, and you would feel that you are underconfident completely, and that can really take a lot of time for kids to come out of that zone. So what we try and do is we try and provide them a large platform which allows them to compete at a national level across 3,000 schools. So we have a property called Lead Championships, where all schools, and it's divided into multiple competitions around debating, around GK, etc. And then what it does is, even a kid in a tier 3-4 town, he or she has the ability to not just outshine everyone in their town, but they can compete at a large national level. We just concluded the championship now, and we had a participation across more than 2,000 schools in that championship. Another one of the initiatives that we saw was we figured that while our focus has been a lot in the initial years on academics, but we've started to add a layer of extracurriculars there. So and getting the best of teachers to come and really work with those children and also inspire them. So we created a series called Masterclass, where we identified different topics. So let's say creative writing, public speaking, and health and fitness. So and we have started to get experts to come and talk to students. So for creative writing, we got Chetan Bhagat to come and run a workshop for children. For public speaking, we got Sunil Gavaskar to come, and so they are not only inspiring those kids. These are personalities who are world renowned, extremely successful in what they do, and can be a source of inspiration for the kids. At the same time, they are coming and talking to them about how they went about their journey, right? So they gave it a structure, which is something which can trigger inspiration in kids and get them to pursue their individual dreams. So these are areas that we've been identifying over the years. I spoke to you about coding. Now that's a great skill that we want to add to all our children. We are going ahead and planning for something called a 21st century skills for children, identifying what all are skills required for children to be successful, and actually introducing that as a part of the curriculum. In near future, we are looking to even go into areas of music, dance, sports, and offer it as a structured curriculum to our children. Because if you think about music, right, typically what used to happen in my school was that there would be a music teacher. She would come and she would just play harmonium. But we never learned how to read music, which now my daughter is able to do because she's pursuing that. And I feel it should not be a privilege, right? Restricted to a few students. A student in tier 2, 3, 4 town deserves that opportunity as much as my daughter.
Yeah. It's so true. My dance teacher, I remember in school, would make all the boys sit on the side and say only the girls need to learn dance. You guys can just sit and like hang around. So we never got to do anything. So in hindsight, I was like, what some of us did. But I think that's interesting is the fact that it also kind of expands from what is beyond traditional education to kind of move towards maybe the arts and like technology, etc., which kids might really be interested in. I have much more questions, but I've been told and I've been reminded rather that we need to go in for a break. So I'll quickly take that and we'll be right back with advertising instead.
We face 100 dilemmas every day while raising our children and nurturing our families. Why not let science help us make informed decisions to solve our dilemmas? Hi, I'm Devi Shobha.
And I'm Meghna. We host Big Talk About Tiny Humans, where we will help you unpack challenges around parenting and your child's development.
And more importantly, we will equip you with research-backed strategies that you can readily act on.
Tune in to our podcast every Wednesday on the IBM Podcasts app, website, or your favorite podcast platforms.
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're still talking to Anupam. We've dug into a lot of the stuff that, especially I think the curriculum part which you discussed towards just before we went for a break, I think is super exciting, right? When you look at it from a student's perspective for the future, people with different interests. I want to flip this around and say that when you look at your team and you look at who the kind of people you are hiring to work with you, what kind of skill sets are you looking for? What kind of because what was traditionally looked at people who would work in the education space and who work in education now, especially in companies like yours, are so different, right? But what do you kind of look for? If I was someone who's starting off their career today and saying, what do I need to have as almost like skills? What do I need to have as a mindset? What would those be?
Varun, hiring and getting the right talent is probably, if not 90%, at least 50% of the problem that we have to solve. And that's one big, I would not say blocker, it's a big enabler, right? If we have the right people, then our ability to solve this problem gets a multiplier effect. In the last 18 months, we have expanded from being at 300 people company to now close to being 1,800 members. And so we've expanded tremendously, almost 6x. And that's because of the kind of growth that we have seen. And it's chicken and egg, right? What comes first? Growth comes first or people come first? I think people come and then they help to deliver or build the organization. So the way we've approached this is ki first build your teams, and they will get the right people, and invest in them, and give them great opportunities to problem solve. And so the kind of people that that I have hired personally in my team, a lot of I think 2-3 things probably remain common. Ability to solve problems from a first principles led thinking, right? Because there is no written recipe for how to attack this problem, and you don't have a YouTube video for it, unfortunately. So it is something that we'll have to do on our own and build it brick by brick, school by school. So that's probably one most important trait that we look for within the teams. And then it's also a function of what kind of functional skill sets you want. So uh, uh, the way the business is divided is, there is a part of team which is looking at growth, and then now we have 3,000, 4,000 schools. So there is a part of team which is also looking at making sure that we are delivering on our commitment to the schools that we have partnered with, right? So growth, as well as ensuring that we have a very high net promoter score, or NPS as we define it, or we have a satisfied customer, existing customer, because end of the day, schools is still a business of referrals, right?
Yeah.
That if a happy parent will go and tell 10 more parents that he or she is happy and refer more students. The more a parent refers to other parents, the happier is our school owner, because then he's got a constant inflow of students. And the happier our school owner is, the happier we are. So it works like that. So in my team, I look after the entire marketing function. So I've got people with very diverse talents. So I've got team who's thinking brand, and how do we build over the next 5 years probably a brand which is standing out as amongst the top 10 brands in the country. So that's a large problem to solve, right? How do we do that, and therefore defining our dream for the brand. Uh, the other trait that I probably look at is slightly more unconstrained thinking, because you're solving such a large problem, and therefore we want to aim high and aim big, because if we start looking at this problem as saying that, hey, let's look at 10%, 20% growth, then in our lifetime we'll not be able to cater to such a large number of students. We are aiming to cater to almost 60,000 schools over the next 5 years. We are currently at around about 5,000 schools. So from here on, over the next 5 years, if we need to multiply by 12x, so then you can imagine that you're wanting a tremendous growth, and that will not happen by push. That will happen by a pull for the brand. And therefore, how do we? That's probably the biggest challenge in my team currently. And if there are any brand marketers listening to this, I would be more than happy for any of you, if this excites you, more than happy for you guys to reach out to us and come and join us. So that's one. That's the other thing that we are looking to solve. And then there are functional traits like performance marketing, digital marketing, etc., which are largely under the bucket of growth. How do you help us grow? And through different ways. However, I think just adding one flavor, that it is unlike in a lot of B2C edtech, here the problem solving is not only around digital led journeys, right? Because we are dealing with schools who primarily have been operating in an offline world. So one has to think more omni-channel versus only an offline channel or a digital channel.
And I think what's also interesting about this whole thing is that in many ways, because you're kind of growing at the pace where you're at, you're adding in as many pieces from across consumers. And you're also looking at the future, seeing what are the trends kind of coming up. So you briefly spoke about pieces that you're adding into the mix. But if you had to kind of look at the future and say, both from a career standpoint of someone who wants to work in this space, as well as trends for the overall market per se, what do you kind of see as both from like working in it, but also like trends for the market? What would those be?
I think in the school edtech space, what I feel is there was when we started off in our journey, I think a lot of people said that it's a difficult problem to solve, and does not make a lot of business sense. And However, our founders, Sumit and Smita, who started off this organization, they firmly believed in saying that, hey, as of now, we are not doing it for any valuation. We are doing it more from a point of view that this problem needs to be addressed, and therefore let's find the right way to address it. And they persisted with it. Eventually, they were able to find a right product market fit, which now we are able to scale. As we scale it, it is also making business sense. So we've been able to prove to our investors that there is business sense in it, and the fact that we've reached a milestone where we've joined a coveted club of being a unicorn, and I truly believe in it that it's just a milestone. What it does for us is it enables us to solve the problem that we're trying to solve much faster, because now we've got resources. We can invest money more behind product development. We can invest money behind bringing the right talent to the organization at a much faster pace, expand faster, and take our product to more and more schools, to more and more parents. So that's what it allows us to do. I think what will happen over the next couple of years is, because we've been able to build a successful business here, you will probably start to see more players come in into this industry, which more often than not, it also is good for the category, right? Because it is good for overall ecosystem, because then there are more people who are trying to solve the same problem. It brings in more innovation into the industry. I think, no offense to people who have been in the education industry, when you bring fresh talent who's coming from different industries, they bring a different perspective,
100%.
and they're able to approach problems a little differently. So while there is a lot of value of experience in the industry, because they are able to articulate the problem well, I think people who come from varied experiences, they are able to use their experience of other ecosystems and pull those best practices and try and solve the problem in a very different way. And I feel it's always good for the category, or for the industry, or for the consumer at large. There'll be more choices, there'll be more innovation, and there'll hopefully be more investment from investors also in the school EdTech segment part of it. I think those 2 and 3 is, I think, as a result of the pandemic, schools will start, as they open, they've been using technology only, or delivering entire education through online. As they go back offline, I feel there will be a much larger adoption of technology within the school's offline way of working. That's another meta trend that I foresee as picking up. And it goes back to the point number 2, that as schools drive more and more adoption, more players will come and provide a lot more integrated solutions. And I think eventually now, or I wish that eventually people start talking more about the impact on students' learning as a result of whatever investment is being made within the school, right? Otherwise, it doesn't serve a purpose. I would,
agree.
at least I wish, that's my wish for the industry, that we start to talk more about how does it help a student learn better. Whatever solutions exist, whether B2C or B2B, eventually that's the thing that one should measure.
I couldn't agree more on that front. Towards the end of every episode, I ask my guests a set of questions. We've spoken a lot about work, but what I always like to ask is that beyond work, what do you spend a lot of your time doing? What piques your interest when you're taking a pause from work and work, and like kind of figuring out any areas of interest that you might have, stuff that you spend time doing? What would those be for you?
Personally, Varun, so I stay with my family, and 2 kids. There's a dog, parents, wife, right? So we are a large family. And personally, once that's my unwinding. We like to travel as a bunch. We really like to go on long drives over the weekends whenever we get a time. Personally, between me and my wife, we also both actively pursue running. So weekends, early mornings, I'm more of a morning person. Early mornings, right now is the perfect weather in Bombay. Last couple of weeks have been great for running. And so those are that morning 1.5 hour that I get is my own personal time. That helps me to just relax and probably think about the day as I do my normal routine. And then my kids and the pet, they are the once you get back to them, they absorb any kind of uh, pain that you might be going through. They provide you, and they just give you a very the fresh breath of life, right? That you spend time with them. I'm sure you do that as well. I think that's my beyond work. I think the work itself uh, keeps me busy because being in a startup and a high growth startup, and also trying to solve a large problem, which you are also deeply sort of vested in now, because I going through the pandemic also opened my eyes towards this problem.
I spent a year and a half in class, so I totally understand what kids go through on a daily basis. So I understand.
Right, and so therefore you one day ends up spent, because it's not like work, right? It's you treat it like a problem that you want to really solve, and therefore you're deeply vested. And then the balance time that one gets, you largely end up spending with family, with only that 1 hour that I need every day, which I try to spend on my own.
Anything that you've read, listened to, or watched recently that you'd recommend that people should kind of catch up on?
Yeah, to be honest, I realized that I'm not someone who reads books. I found myself to be very impatient because I start a lot of books and I don't end up finishing them. And I envy people who are able to do it. So I'm someone who I try to read articles which are shorter, right? So I subscribe to a bunch of very good industry leading forums. For example, Ken is something that I get a daily dose of. From a business lens, it's Mint, and then I also actively read HBR. So these are the 2-3 things that I try and pursue. Unfortunately, I've tried to get into a habit of reading books, but I suck at it.
But those subscriptions are actually great. Those subscriptions are great recommendations for anyone, right? Like I agree with the Ken, HBR, even like Warning Context. Some of these are great to kind of have to kind of read on a daily basis. I think that's I should add subscriptions to my question from the next guest onwards, because I think that we have a lot of those which we consume, but HBR especially I think is fabulous content. So much to learn from what they put out there. And if I have to ask you, and this is generally the final question of the show, why do you think adding more new age solutions to how school education happens will not die? Why do you think that need will not die?
I think in the context of schooling, or you see every facet of our life, right? And the way it has evolved, the way you and I are conversing today was very different probably 20 years back. When the landline phone first came into my household in early 90s, and till before that, we used to have a neighbor who had willingly shared his number with a bunch of households in the on that street. It was a big thing, right, when that phone came. To now, where everyone's got a smartphone. If you look at even the watchman today, I think that's really the piece, that when you enter a society, the security guard there, to enter phone number of someone or to enter whom they are meeting, they don't type it anymore. It's voice enabled, right? They just speak it out, and Google is able to help them enter the data. So I think in every facet of life, there is technology is sort of enabling. As long as technology is enabling something and solving for a core problem, you will find adoption. Now, and therefore, it cannot be that you have to adopt technology. You have to adopt the right technology, which is solving something. Right. So as long as we are able to offer solutions to schools which make their life easier, mundane tasks that they do. For example, homework assignment and checking. Right. Now, if at the end of the class, a teacher is able to trigger homework to all students just by pushing a button, and students don't have to copy everything in their diary. Parents don't need a reminder, don't need to check the diary, and they're able to just set a notification on their app to say, hey, this homework is due tomorrow. Student submits it, does not have to wait for 1 week for the teacher to give feedback and check, right? There is a solution which is auto enabled, which checks the homework automatically, and there and then tells the student, hey, this is something that you did wrong. this is something you did right. What you did wrong, why don't you take a look at this video and clarify this concept? And it happens instantly, right? If if technology is able to do that and make student learning better, solve for every stakeholder. Teachers, for example, don't get time, and checking homework probably is a very mundane task, right? So are they better off just looking at feedback, saying, hey, this child is weak in this area, so let me focus on improving that for her, versus reading through the answer, and that's something that can be automated, right? So if you give them the right solution, and there is a lot of scope for that, because schools have been probably in terms of adoption of technology, they have been they've been lagging. However, it requires the right problem to be solved for them via tech. If it is not doing that, then just for the sheer fun of it, there is no point in getting them to adopt it. I feel there is a lot of scope for automation there, and though I have a vested interest, I am working in a school EdTech led organization. But because we are so close to the schools, we work closely with them. We feel that there's a lot of scope there.
Yeah. No, but I think we all have vested interest in this, and from different directions. And I think you made a lot of really important points. So you can kind of understand the sector, but also look at the opportunities and how it's kind of evolving. Thanks a ton, Anupam. Thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for all the insights you kind of given. It's been like I have a bunch of notes and a bunch of thoughts in terms of how this space is kind of evolving. Thanks a ton for coming on Advertising Instead.
Thank you so much, Varun. Thank you. Such a pleasure. And I also want to thank you guys for not just giving me an opportunity. I know you guys give, it's a great platform for a bunch of folks like me to come and share what they are doing. Sometimes, listening to these podcasts is also inspirational for you to get an idea from someone else in a very different industry and try and see if one can replicate it. And through this medium, you also, I think a lot of people get to know about the organization. Exactly. Such an organization exists. And if there are people who would like to work for us and get associated with us, I think it also provides us a medium to do that. Thank you.
How should someone kind of get in touch if they're interested in working for you guys? Is there like an email ID they should write it to, or just like go to your site? How do you recommend they do that?
I think we have a fairly active careers page. It's full of opportunities on LinkedIn.
Super.
I think they should just look us up there, and if they express interest in any opportunity, or look me up on LinkedIn. I try and revert to every single candidate who reaches out to me and connect them to the right function, even if it's not for marketing.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks a ton, Anupam. Thanks for coming on the show, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this kind of evolves. As parents who are looking at kids evolve, I think it's interesting for us to see how this space is entirely evolving. So thanks a ton for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Varun.
If you like this podcast and you want to listen to more podcasts like this, head over to the IVM Podcast website or app or wherever you get your podcast from and look at all the podcasts that IVM makes. There's some really fun stuff there.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Storytellers and Storytellers, Vineet talks to music producer Kabir Katpalia. He shares what it was like making music for the film Gerhaiya. On Think Fast, Varun and Suchita are in conversation with Front Row's Ishanpreet Singh. He tells us about all there is to know about the subscription model. On The Wire Talk, Siddharth talks to author Pramod Kapoor about his new book, 1946 Royal Indian Navy Mutiny, The Last War of Independence. On Postcards from Nowhere, Utsav traces the legacy of Sindhis and tells us why crocodiles are important to them. And on Say No to Drama, Chetna deconstructs growing up but not growing apart in a relationship. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. The word of mouth really helps. Also, don't forget to rate us on whatever platform you're listening to us and check us out on YouTube. You can check a list of all our channels at ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Bank of Baroda and HDFC Life Insurance. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Namaste, this is Cyrus Brocha. I am part of the government cancel culture program to remove rubbish off all the different streams available. So what we have is all the collected rubbish we put together on our show. It's called Cyrus Says. It's on IVM Podcast. You have to watch it and listen to it. It's on our app. It's on our website. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on Facebook. There are many different ways. Don't bother me and ask me how. You have to find out. We talk to different personalities. Many of them are known. Some are just people we meet downstairs and invite them up for chai. But the point is, it's fun and it's very therapeutic. So please join in and listen to Cyrus Says.